second jumper that I'd ever made, and I decided to go for a colourwork yoke, which actually I'm not going to say was a mistake. If you want to do something and you think you're not advanced enough yet for it, or you're not good enough for it yet, just have a go. I'm pretty sure I sewed the buttons onto it in early 2024, so it counts as a 2024 finished item. Is that how this works? It's my video, I can make the rules, right? I can do whatever I want. Welcome back to Shirty Deeds. My name's Jen. I like to talk about all things knitting and sewing, and the time has come for an end of year review, a review of all the things I have made in 2024. I have decided to split this into two separate videos. I'm aware that a lot of the knitters amongst you might not be interested in the sewing at all, and vice versa. First of all, knitting today is what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to preface all of this by saying there's not as much knitting been done this year as I thought there might be at the beginning of the year, because about a year ago my husband and I had something of a midlife crisis and decided to convert a giant van into a camper van. It was just like a work sort of builder's style van, and anybody that's done this or considered doing this quickly realises that it's a huge amount of work and everything takes about 10 times longer than you think it's going to. So massive swathes of our time have been spent doing that, so there was a bit less sewing and knitting time than I would have liked this year, but it's been really creative. We've done lots of problem solving, I've learnt loads of new skills doing it, and it has been making, in a way, we've been making this home on wheels that we can take lots of exciting places. So huge amount of my making and creative energy has been going into that this year. There has been some sewing and fabric related things involved in it, and there will be more to come because we haven't quite finished it. We're going to be finishing it in the spring, ready for more adventures in the summer, but we did actually manage to take it away a few times. It's been wonderful and liberating, and I am not complaining at all. Feel very lucky that we have this awesome van that we have built ourselves. But let's get started. You might want to grab a drink. We could be here a while. And now I'm going to have a sip of my drink and do that slightly cringy thing where I drink my coffee while I'm filming this. And I have filmed this intro so many times that my coffee is cold. Excellent. Might need to microwave the rest of that in a bit. Okay, so I'm going to go in order of when these things got finished. This, actually, most of it was made in 2023. But I'm pretty sure I sewed the buttons onto it in early 2024, so it counts as a 2024 finished item. Is that how this works? It's my video, I can make the rules, right? I can do whatever I want. So we're going to say this got finished in 2024. It is a cardigan, a pretty plain and simple cardigan in a pretty shocking shade of turquoise, which I actually really love. There have been points during the year that I've considered giving it to my mum because she really loves wearing this colour and I wasn't sure about it, but I think I've found things I can wear it with now where it fits into my wardrobe a bit better, and I've grown to love it because it's made out of the softest yarn and it's really comfortable and it's very warm and it just brightens you up on a dull day, doesn't it? This is it's a petite knit pattern. It's one of the first garments that I made. It's probably the second proper garment, jumper or cardigan that I made. The first one was also a petite knit one. I'll show you that at some point. There's so many mistakes in it, it's almost embarrassing. But this is the second garment that I ever made after I started knitting. And it's the petite knit Copenhagen cardigan, minus the lovely pockets that the cardigan has. there were a couple of reasons for not adding pockets. One was I didn't think I had enough yarn because I only had 400-gram balls of the yarn that I used, and I was a bit worried I was going to run out, and I've got long arms, so I needed to do the sleeves really long. And the second reason is I, as still a new knitter at the end of 2023, was pretty nervous about doing anything too complicated, and I felt like knitting a whole cardigan was enough without adding fiddly pocket bits. I would probably attempt that now because I think the pockets are really cute, and I would probably make the pattern again, so perhaps next time I will add the pockets. It's a top-down sort of seamless style thing. It's got raglan increases for the, to bring out the shoulders. And you knit the neckband and the button placket as you're going along, so you don't have to apply those afterwards, which I quite liked about it. It's got very sort of skinny bits of ribbing on the ends of the sleeves and at the bottom of the cardigan, so it's not big chunky amount of ribbing. And the button placket also is quite thin and delicate. I don't know what the decision was to put big black buttons on it. I think they were just what I had, but actually I quite like it. I think it adds a bit of edge to a pretty vanilla looking cardigan. I quite like it. This was made out of, you've heard me talk about this before, a load of yarn that my mum picked me up in Aldi, the budget supermarket. You'll probably realise by now that she bought me 4 balls of several different colours, and one of them was this lovely turquoise one, and it's a DK weight yarn, although I would say, having knitted other DK yarns since, that this one was quite a thick, heavier weight DK, which has made quite a sturdy, solid sort of fabric, which I think I quite like. There are a few things that I would change about this. I don't know whether it's because you knit back and forth for a cardigan. This wasn't like steeked or anything. You just knit backwards and forwards, knitting one way, purling the next way. And I've got, I think, perhaps some pretty extreme tension differences between my knits and my purls, or at least I did at the point of knitting this. So when you get to doing this button band bit that you do as you're going along in rib, knit one, purl one, I found that it still curls, even though you've sort of added that edge that should sort of take the tension differences out and have the fabric not curl so much. I find it still does curl. So I have to be really careful whenever I wash this of kind of re-blocking it and making sure it's sort of blocked out nice and flat to dry. Otherwise it's just curly-whirly at the front and goes in on itself, and it annoys me when I'm wearing it, so I have to be really careful about that. The small amount of ribbing at the ends and at the bottom hem doesn't seem to matter so much with that. It's just down the front where the buttons are. It really curls in, and also quite annoying is this effect that you get whenever you're wearing any, I think it's just a thing with knitwear, isn't it? That you get that kind of like gaping between the buttons if you want to wear it with the buttons done up. So I don't really wear it with the buttons done up. I wear it as a chuck it on over a t-shirt type thing, because you get that gapey sort of effect, which I don't like. I think it looks a bit kind of amateur hour. Don't know your thoughts on that. But for a second garment, not too bad, right? It's quite nice, good colour. It fits. I think it fits quite nicely. I will also try and put in some pictures of me wearing all of these things so you can see the full finished effect. But that was something of a success. It's not perfect. There are mistakes. But I'm pretty proud of my second garment being cardigan, which I thought was going to be really difficult, and actually it was okay. Okay, next thing that I finished in 2024. I think this was kind of going on at about the same time that I knitted the previous item. And this, at the time, at that point in my knitting career, was incredibly ambitious, I think. And I didn't realise perhaps how ambitious it was. And it certainly hasn't created a perfect item, but it is this colourwork yoke sweater. First colourwork I'd ever done, second jumper that I'd ever made, and I decided to go for a colourwork yoke, which actually I'm not going to say was a mistake. If you want to do something and you think you're not advanced enough yet for it, or you're not good enough for it yet, just have a go. Follow the instructions if you're okay following written instructions. Find some tutorials online. There's lots of video tutorials which actually helped quite a lot with this. I managed it and it's turned out wearable, and I do wear it, and I really quite like it. It's warm and snuggly and wintry looking, and it's lovely. It's also really heavy, I think because of the size of it. It's quite oversized, and the yarn is pretty heavy too. This is the Sari Nordland Urban Adventure sweater, which is an oversized colourwork yoke sweater, ribbed collar obviously, knitted from the top down, sort of all in one go, but of course you've got all this lovely colourwork to deal with. I chose it because I thought the quite big repeat of the design would make it easier as a beginner doing stranded colourwork. I think that was perhaps a mistake because the bigger your sections of colours are, the more you have to do things like catching floats so you don't end up with masses of string the other side flopping around everywhere. And if I'd chosen a repeat that was like diddier and smaller and more delicate, perhaps that might have been easier for my first go. There are also certain sections, like just round here I think it was, that you have to deal with 3 colours at the same time. Dealing with the 2 colours is enough, and having one on each side, and I knit English style rather than continental, so I do it both with the same hand, and you feel like you're picking up one yarn for a few stitches and then having to pick up the other one, and it's all a bit labour intensive. When you have 3 colours that you're working at once, that gets a lot more complicated and difficult, and I did find it really tricky, the yarn management. There was a lot of sort of winding the balls round each other to untangle things, and there was no way that this could be like a portable knit to take places because the yarn management was like a mission. But I'm so proud that I made this. I'm so proud. It's enormous. It's every time I wear it, people say, oh, it's very big. And it is. It's so wide. And I think that's kind of accentuated by the fact that it's quite floppy yarn. The yarn that I made this out of was Karen Simply Soft Aran. I think the pattern calls for a worsted weight yarn, and I bought this Karen Simply Soft Aran thinking that's probably close enough to worsted, let's swatch it up and see what happens. So that's what I did, and I did actually, I could get gauge with it, so I went for it with that. It is super soft, so soft, makes the drapiest fabric. I don't think you'd know that it was acrylic yarn. It's just, I mean, it's buttery smooth, really soft, really drapey, looks lovely, and it's probably not the ideal thing to do colour work out of because of the soft, sheeny smoothness of it. It doesn't grip very well, and I think probably from what I've heard, grippier yarns are better for doing colour work to get your stitches to sort of stay where they need to stay. I think that's the idea. Tell me if I'm wrong. So this was very smooth. So I don't think I made making this very easy for myself. But I just took my time with it, kept going, hoped for the best. I got to the end of the yoke and thought, oh gosh, it all looks like a bunched up mess. Is this ever going to look decent? But I soaked it and sort of blocked it to try and even out the stitches. and that colour work, and when I laid it all out flat, left it to dry, it looked about 1,000,000 times better. So when I wash this now, I just make sure that I kind of almost reblock it. I wash it in the washing machine, I do with all these acrylic things. And they come out fine as long as I lay them out really nice and flat to dry, how I want them to dry. It is still a little bit bumpy where the yolk is. It's quite difficult to get your tension right, isn't it, with stranded colour work? But for the most part, it looks all right. I'm going to show you the inside of it, because I just think the inside of these things look a bit bonkers, don't they? Look at all those floats. I had to catch a lot of the floats, and that was a bit tricky how to learn how to do that. But I'm glad I did, because otherwise it would just catch on everything. It would be like catching on bra straps and jewellery and whatever on the inside. But it kind of, that view of it makes me feel even prouder of it than the outside. From the outside, it kind of hides all that. It sort of all looks nice and sort of done, but it hides all of that work. But it also, all that work makes it so warm, because you've basically got a double layer of fabric, haven't you, with all the floats and then the front of it. It's so thick and warm around the shoulders, it's like wearing a shawl over a jumper. It's lovely. So, really proud of that. Will be making more colourwork things. I did attempt another colourwork sweater that was just 2 colours, which I thought yarn management would be better. And I got most of the way down the colourwork yoke of it, and it didn't fit, it was far too small. And I had to frog the whole thing. Go back to episode 1 of the Sew and Knitcast if you want to hear all about that. This yarn that's just a bit of a nightmare. But I will be attempting more colourwork things in the future, for sure. Proud. We're going to call that one a success. Unlike the next item that's staring at me like a bad smell. That's not a phrase. This was another petite knit pattern. I'd had such success with my first 2 petite knit patterns that I tried another one. And my gripes with this are not to do with the pattern. I think the pattern was actually great. There were lots of techniques in it that I hadn't done before. And the pattern just, those patterns, they just hold your hand through it, don't they? They describe everything so precisely. And as a still fairly beginner knitter, it's good to have your hand held a bit in that way, rather than just having a very dry pattern with not much information. So I like the petite knit patterns for that, and none of this is gripes on those patterns at all, but I think this is a bit of a fail. It's another cardigan. It's going to be hard to show you properly because I haven't even put buttons on it, because I don't know if I want to. It's the Eva Cardigan pattern. I know lots of people have made this one. It's a really nice design. I wanted something that, unlike the Copenhagen Cardigan that was like a sort of round neck design, I wanted a V-neck sort of one that I could chuck on over things like shirts and t-shirts and stuff. And I'd sort of seen that the pattern had a ribbed, what do you call it? Collar section that comes all the way down, that instead of knitting it as you go along, you apply it afterwards. So you knit all the rest of it and then you put the whole collar piece right round the neckline and right round the front onto it afterwards. Which was fine. Picking up the stitches was fine. I think the shoulder shaping is really interesting on this. It's probably going to be hard to show you. It's a contiguous shoulder method. And I'd not done anything like that before, because all the things that I'd done jumper-wise had all been sort of top down in the round kind of things. But this contiguous shoulder sort of design that then sort of becomes the top of the sleeves I found really interesting to do. I quite like something with, you know, a construction method that I haven't tried. And I think it fits quite nice around my quite wide shoulders, so I quite like that about it. My main problem with this is that I don't think the yarn's very great. This was another one from because I just like to use what I've got. It was another one of the colours that Mum had picked out in the supermarket of these acrylic yarns. And it's so interesting that even though they sort of had the same branding on the packets, each of the different colours has been completely different to knit with and made a really different fabric. This is a much finer, thinner one than the turquoise cardigan that I showed you a little while ago. Much finer and thinner, made a sort of more drapey fabric. And it doesn't feel as buttery, soft and smooth as the other one. And I just find that so curious that a different colour of what is supposedly the same yarn actually behaves so differently and feels so different. So it's not uncomfortable to wear, it's not scratchy or squeaky or anything, but it's not as luxuriously soft as the turquoise one. So that's a thing. And also because it's acrylic, it doesn't do the same amount of kind of stretching when you block it like something like wool would. Now a lot of you know that I don't use wool. So far I've been experimenting with different types of acrylic yarns, and I've got some cotton that I've bought that's in my stash that I've got some plans for, want to try with some natural plant fibres. But acrylics it has been for now, and they're just all so different. And this one, I just don't know if I love. I really like the colour of it, this kind of dusky burgundy colour. I was really excited about this cardigan, but I had real problems with the neckband that flows down into the sort of button plackets. It was all going really well. I picked up the stitches. I did that really evenly. I really did the maths to figure out that it was every however many stitches, 2 or 3 or whatever it was. I counted all the stitches. I marked it out, put stitch markers in, did it all really carefully. So it all started really well with adding that band, the ribbed band. I even was really pleased with how the buttonholes turned out, because you sort of create the buttonholes as you're going along with it. And they turned out really tidy looking. You can barely tell they're there. That's great. But the reason I haven't put buttons on it is because I think this might need fixing somehow. And it's because when you've done all the ribbing, it then says cast off in, I think it's something like cast off in the usual cast off method, you know, where you just like knit 2, pull 1 over the other, knit 2, pull 1 over the other. The kind of, the old reliable, as they would say on that podcast I love. What are they called? Pardon my stash. Old reliable cast off. If you don't listen to that podcast, you should. They're absolutely brilliant. They make me laugh so much. So I did the old reliable cast off, and I did it just as it said in the pattern. I carried on with the same size needle that I'd been doing the ribbing in, and it was so tight and not stretchy as that regular type of cast off is, that it pulled all of the ribbing upwards so much that it just didn't hang right at the front. Now it kind of looks like it's hanging all right now, because I had to rip off the entire cast off after I'd done it, and I'd left it a couple of days, and I went back to it and I put it on, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to stretch that out or block that out somehow magically, because it's not wool and it's not stretchy like that. So I ripped it all out and did the whole cast off again, but on a size of needles bigger. I can't remember how many, whether it was a millimetre bigger or 0.5 millimetre or whatever, but I went up a needle size to do the cast off again, and it improved it loads. And when you hold it up like this, that cast off edge down the front looks like it sits pretty nice with the ribbing. It's the right size. It is a little bit stretchy. It's like stretchy enough. Problem is when this bit goes around your neck and that bit of your neck comes up, it sort of needs a bit more like stretch and give there in order for it to like lay really flat. You'll probably be able to see, I'll try and get some pictures of me wearing this. When it's on, I get much more of that effect where that front edge is like pulling up and it just won't hang nice and flat. And it irritates me enough that I haven't really worn it very much. I have worn it, but it's not my favourite thing. I think it makes it look untidy. So I need to sort it out. And I've got possibly a plan forming for that. I've heard of this thing with acrylic yarns where you can kill the yarn with heat, a sort of controlled amount of heat or steam, to not just set the fibres in the position that you have them, because blocking doesn't work the same with acrylic, does it? It's not like wool where it sort of keeps its shape. But if you apply the right amount of heat from an iron very carefully at a distance, or steam, you can kill the acrylic yarn, which just melts it ever so slightly and kind of knits together some of the fibres with the melting. And if you do it with it in a position that you want it to stay in, it will then stay in that position forever, because you've slightly melted and then cooled the fibres. Because of course acrylic is just plastic, isn't it? And it melts. So I'm considering, because I'm not really wearing this, and I would like to try and improve it, I'm considering trying to kind of reblock it, but killing the yarn in that melting it sort of way, in order to be able to get that front bit to stay down where it's supposed to. And it might improve the feel of the yarn, because as I said, it's not quite as soft as some of the others I've used. And I think I could make it more luxurious and soft and lovely if I kill the yarn. I think I need to do some more research on this and figure out exactly how I'm going to do it. If anybody has done this before, can you tell me how it went? You might all just say, oh my goodness, don't do that, you're going to absolutely ruin it. But if I'm not wearing it anyway, am I losing much if killing the acrylic doesn't work? It's all a learning experience, right? So, could be improved. I'm proud of the work that I did on it. I'm proud that I went back and ripped out all that binding off and did it again, and it did improve it. So I sort of problem solved my way out of part of the problem. But I think it could be improved further to the point that I would actually be wearing it a lot more. So that's possibly going to become a whip again in 2025. But that's okay, right? It's okay if it's not quite there. So bit of a fail, bit of a win, more of a fail, I think. Let's see if we can get this wearable in the next year. Okay. The only other 3 finished knitting items are things that you may have already seen if you've watched some of my previous videos. So I'm not going to bang on about them too much. If you're interested in these, I would recommend you go back and watch the Sew and Knitcast episode 1 or Sew and Knitcast episode 2, because I talk about all these items in more detail. But I'm going to show them here anyway. Oh, do you know what? After I've done this, I must not forget to show you something that I no longer own because I gave it away. Must not forget to tell you about that one because I was really pleased with it. So there's 2 scarves that I made. One being the Entwine Scarf. I'll try and chuck some details up on the screen. Lovely, out of super chunky, super bulky yarn with this gorgeous slip stitch pattern that I love, and lovely tassels, and it's super warm and snuggly, and it goes really well with this jumper, I think. So I talked at length about this and the slight, I'm not going to call it drama because it's not really drama, is it? But the slight boo-boo of not having enough yarn and then having to buy it and trying to get the same dye lot, etc. I did talk about this in that first video. This actually only took 3 days to knit. I was laid up on the sofa not feeling very well, and knitting was about all I could manage, and it being super bulky yarn, I managed to get this whole giant scarf done in 3 days. So that was kind of a win, and it was, I expect something like this is kind of a good palette cleanser between more complex long projects, I think. Kind of gets you excited for the next thing because you've finished something quite quick. And I'm not usually into, you know, just to bash it out and get it done, make it really quick. But this, just by virtue of it being out of such huge yarn on such massive needles, got finished really quickly. And hopefully I'll be wearing it for many years to come. That was a success. I like it. Next one, also a scarf. Been big on scarves this year. Which, by the way, I'm not sure I would recommend to beginners. The first thing I actually made when I started knitting was a scarf, and it just felt like it went on forever. I think, like, try a cowl or something to start with, or a hat, because they move along a lot faster, and a scarf just seems to never, like, if you want a 2 metre long scarf, it seems to go on forever. I wouldn't recommend it as a beginner project. Don't do what I did. Learn from my mistakes. Next one, you've all seen in a couple of episodes, if you've been here before. If not, I'll briefly talk about it again. Inspired by Doctor Who, stripy scarf, stripes all different lengths, colours that don't really go together but sort of do. Really solid, linen stitch, stands up around the neck. Really love this, have worn it out. The place that I wore it out last week was to a hospital appointment. How glamorous. But the consultant actually commented on how nice she thought my scarf was. So I'm going to call that a win. She's a very classy lady. I'll take it from her. She thought my scarf was great. And I told her I made it and she was amazed. Anywho, with the Doctor Who scarf. A total success. Really love this. Very pleased with it. It'll be in the wardrobe a very long time. Final thing that I finished this year is the jumper that I'm wearing, and I'm trying something new with it today. It's the Cocoon Chokki jumper by, oh gosh, can't remember the name, Japanese designer. Talked about it a lot in my first video because I was so proud of it, and I'm still really proud of it. I think I made it really nicely. There's barely any mistakes in it. It's kind of warm but not too warm. It's great. I've been wearing it over long-sleeved shirts, like long-sleeved button-down type shirts. Really love this big sort of statement-y neckline. Love that it's so huge. I'm wearing it, I'm trying something new by wearing it with a t-shirt today rather than something long-sleeved, because what are their names? Sarah and Paige, is it? From Two Purls in a Pod? I love watching them. I think they're so cute. They're like each other's best hype crew, which I love. They had this whole thing about sleeveless jumpers keeping the core warm, but kind of letting the pits breathe, which this one with its super deep armholes is doing for me today. So it's like, it's a bit chilly today, but not super cold. And actually, over a t-shirt, I am just the right temperature. I don't know whether it looks a bit weird. A sleeveless jumper with bare arms. Does it look weird? I'm trying it out. For hanging about the house, filming some videos today, I'm very comfortable. If you want to see more about this, the first ever sewing knitcast that I put out, I talk about this at some length. Go back and have a look at that. Okay, so thinking that I told you about everything, I thought I'd finish the video, went off, had some lunch, and I've had to come back because I've realised the thing that I was going to tell you about that I gave away, I haven't talked about. It was another scarf. It's been a scarfy sort of year. I made a scarf for my mum. She had received a scarf from me the previous year for Christmas and loved it so much and got so many compliments on it. She asked me if I might think about making her another one. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe if I've got time. but I made her another one for her birthday. So I made her a very wintry, very warm scarf and gave it to her as her birthday present in June. And on her birthday in June, it was a heat wave. So it was the most inappropriately timed gift ever. And the only picture in existence that I have of this scarf is this picture that I'll try and put up now of her wearing it. And this was the picture that she sent me on the morning of her birthday once she'd opened her present, and despite the heat wave, put on the scarf, took a picture of herself. This was a scarf, another one that I did in linen stitch, but I knitted it sideways, so I didn't go end to end, I went long end to long end. So I casted on hundreds of stitches and then did linen stitch with one row in each colour, all forwards, so all knit way. Does that make sense? With the colours all rotating to make the stripes go lengthways rather than crossways. And she seems to be pleased with the scarf. I hope she is. I hope now it's winter she's getting the opportunity to wear it, because she certainly wasn't going to be wearing it in June when she received it. So that was another item that I've come back after an hour to film again and tell you about. Okay, we can go back to the past and finish the video as it was supposed to be finished now. So, informed by my knitting that I've done over the last 12 months, what are some of the things that I think I might like to try going forward? I have never made socks. I would really like to make socks. There is kind of a lack of non-wool sock yarns available, and I feel like acrylic socks are a really bad idea. They're just going to be like a sweatbox, aren't they? So there's a few places that do cotton bases for sock yarns, sort of cotton and nylon, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking about getting some of that and giving socks a go, because I'd really like to try making socks. I feel like I need to make more winter hats, because my sort of old reliable hat that I wear in the winter, this grey one that was a shop bought thing, is bobbly and fuzzy and old and smells a bit and needs replacing. So I thought I could make some nice replacements for things like that. More garments that I want to make. I've got some yarns for a few future projects that I'm into. I just want to develop my skills and do some interesting things. Not put too much pressure on myself. Not do too much shopping. I don't want to develop some gigantic yarn stash that's overwhelming. I don't have a huge stash at the moment. I tend to try and use up things that I've got, such as for things like this. This was all made out of scraps that were from previous projects. So I quite like doing that, using up things in stash. And that'll be the 2025 going forward. If you've got any ideas of new challenges I could take on, or new things that you think I should have a go at making, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. I love it when you comment on my stuff and tell me what I should be doing. It's honestly really helpful, and it's so nice to feel part of a community where people actually care about what I've got to say. It's lovely. So I hope it was interesting to see some of the things I've made. If you're interested in the sewing items, which is, I think, going to be a much bigger video, the sort of sewing version of this rundown of 2024 will be coming out soon. And in the meantime, enjoy all your making and creating, knitting, sewing, whatever you're up to. And I'll see you next time.